Hello. Today we visit a r/AskReddit post to see what's the worst mistake you've seen someone do in their job. Make sure to comment a terrible mistake you have made. They don't have to be as deep as the ones in the video, they can even be funny. Just make sure to comment something. With that, sit back and enjoy. Update. The biggest question is, where or what company is this? This was over 22 years ago in Asia. I apologize for not remembering the name, but they went under shortly after. Plant manager let the safety guy go because they didn't believe safety was a full-time job, and wanted to cut back on company spending. He decided the supervisors could do all the safety audits, training, keep the building up to code. Not even a week later, two guys got their arms cut off working on a machine that they weren't trained or certified on, and the back building caught fire due to pallets and cardboard boxes being stacked in the wrong area near the furnace. Sorry, just really morbidly curious and want to be clear. Two separate guys got both their arms cut off, for a total of 4 lost limbs in a single workplace accident? Jesus Christ. Were they at all salvageable? Same machine, 2 operators. 3 arms saved, 1 got crushed. It was a cut and press of some kind, not my district that goes up. The operators move the product, press comes down on the next product. A product got stuck, so while reaching inside and with them not being trained or certified on it, they hit the go switch with their knee because they overstretched when they should have grabbed the tool to the left of the machine that is made to pull out stuck products. So the press came down and the arms were gone. As the saying goes, if you think safety's expensive, try having an accident. My dad is a retired chemical engineer who did a lot of the OSHA compliance work at his plant later on in his career, and his email signature tagline was, "Don't learn safety by accident." One time a member of my dev team was given a task to cancel a few credit cards, less than 10 directly in the database. They canceled 17 million. The mistake was only caught when the company helpline started to receive millions of calls the next day from all over the country with people asking why their cards were not working. I did something more mild but similar mistake. We had a test environment for our email server where we would obviously test emails prior to deployment. Now our test environment had 0 differences between itself and the actual customer relationship management, so the only way you knew you were in test was by your login credentials. I sent a test to myself and to the test contacts with the subject line of, "Hey buttface, 100% off today." The actual email body contained the proper markup and copy, but the SL was always meant to be funny. Except I was in the live environment and sent that email to about 2 million contacts. Surprisingly, this dug up some old leads which later did business with us, but few lad does calling someone a buttface while promising free stuff ruin their day. Support staff was not amused. I was trying to figure out how being called a buttface in a marketing email would affect me, and I decided it's pretty heavily up to which company is doing it. If it was from Cards Against Humanity, I know, or maybe even Jackbox, I might be like, lol, on brand. From something more standard like Joanne Fabrics or Domino's, I would be like, well, that's weird. Guess someone ducked up. If it was from my hospital or bank, which do send marketing emails, I might actually be a little upset. I do kinda expect a higher standard from them, all things considered. Not sure if this counts, but during my first internship at a chemical plant I was given the task of reading through safety violation reports and sorting them. This turned out to be way more interesting than I initially expected, as the reports were riddled with accounts of sheer stupidity in the workplace. Here are a few of the most memorable incidents. A woman accidentally glued her own eye shut after trying to reattach a fake nail with industrial-strength heavy-duty super glue and then subsequently rubbing her eye. Someone somehow accidentally mixed an acidic compound from an unmarked bottle into their beverage and drank it. Not as much stupid as it is fascinating. A man working atop some scaffolding forgot to attach his safety harness and fell from about 20 feet onto his back. The report stated that he stood up, somehow was okay after falling from that high, and came back to work the next day good as new. Third guy is one lucky son of a bitch. That lower lumbar adjustment was exactly what he needed. Haven't felt this good in years. Yeah. Guy at my last work climbed an unsafe scaffold that the crew had forgot to mark off before going to lunch, fell 30 feet, and broke both his legs and back. As for the unmarked container, I used to work and live on a ship. Very strict policy of no chlorine bleach for the personal laundry facilities. People would sneak some on. One guy decides to use an empty Coke can that he half filled with bleach in his cabin, and he brought it to laundry room so he wouldn't be spotted. Left the can there. Sure enough, somebody else doing laundry picked up what they thought was their Coke and chugged a big mouthful of Clorox. Saw a guy get zapped pretty bad when he stuck a tool in the wrong place on a big dryer at a hotel where I worked. We had asked him if he should cut the power first, and he said nah, don't need to. For a moment after, we thought he was dead. If he's not dead, he's so ducking lucky. I hope he never makes that mistake again. He was rebooking. A girl on the till had a guy come up and buy a $2 pack of gum with a $100 note saying sorry he didn't have anything smaller. She gave him his $98 change and he left. He came back in a few minutes later and said, "Hey, I found a $2 coin in my car, can I have my $100 back?" So she did it. It was a small shop, so it was a tough scam to fall for. She also managed to lock herself out of her own car while it was running but parked in a way that no one could get in or out of the car park. I had to read your comment a second time to find out what was wrong. I guess it would have worked on me. Works on a lot of people. You get used to a routine, get settled into it, running mostly on autopilot, and then someone throws a wrench like this into the gears, and you react before you think. When I was 16 working my first job, two guys tried to scam me. They came into a pizza shop and bought one small bag of chips, paid with a $10, looked over the register into the drawer. They started asking me to make change, spitting out numbers, trading bills with me quickly. It got really confusing very quickly and I froze. My brain knew something was wrong but not what. Fortunately the manager saw, swooped in and took the drawer to the back to count it. The guys were hollering about how I had their money, and the manager told them if the drawer was over, whatever it was over by would be theirs. They bolted out of the store. I was shocked. The manager explained what was happening and it turns out the drawer was over by $13, so I did in fact have their money. When the district manager heard, he gave me a gift card to the movies because apparently the same thing happened at another of his stores, but the thieves made off with something like $250 there. Everyone was telling me what a great job I did, but really I was just a scared and confused teenager who got lucky, I guess. I'm a lot more careful with registers since. Had a guy when I worked at a grocery store try to buy a fried chicken, like $4.99 with a fake $100. I noticed it felt weird and just didn't look right. Might have been dirty, but I was like, I don't have change, let me run over to customer service and break this for you. Wandered over with the $100 in hand, told my buddy who was the pick at the time working there that this was a fake $100 and he checked it, confirmed it fake, and we contacted the police to come in. Guy hung around until the officer showed up and they conversed, cop and guy. I don't know what happened to him, but it was definitely one of those moments where if I had simply accepted it, I would have been in deep shit. Company director sent his travel plans for a work convention to the communal printer in the staff room. Bet him and the other director would have had a lovely time. 5-star hotel, presidential suite in Barcelona for a week sounded nice. His wife thought so too and was furious she wasn't going. Also, she was surprised that him and the lady director were sharing a room for a week, and that when she looked into it there was no convention. Things went south pretty fast and now the company is no more. But did they still go on the getaway? Yep, as things developed turned out this affair had been going on a long time. Guess they figured if a divorce is on the cards anyway, how much worse can it get? Sounds like our old president. Back in the day, the travel company left a message on his home answering machine to confirm the holiday, except he wasn't taking his wife. Unfortunately, she got the message first and that's how she found out about his girlfriend. Newish employee deleted the root directory for the secure file transfer protocol server. Took the server guys about a day and a half to fully restore it, with all files since the previous night backup lost. Same employee did the exact same thing again a few weeks later. Still had a job when I left, somehow. That sounds like it's a problem on company side. How can such files be even deleted? Here all important folders are protected. Do it once, okay, everybody makes mistakes. Let's learn from it and move on. Twice? That's on their senior admins and management. Juniors being allowed to do this kind of thing repeatedly on production servers is a failure of policy. You expect juniors to mess up. They aren't learning unless they are. You need guardrails to ensure they can't wreak too much havoc. Taught preschool for 8 years before the pandemic. It's protocol to count the children before moving from one room to another to make sure no one gets left behind. I had a coworker on her phone, didn't count kids, and had left behind a child in the toy closet. The kid was 2 years old and trapped, screaming and crying in a dark toy closet for 20 minutes before a teacher passing by the empty classroom heard her. My coworker didn't even get a slap on the wrist and management never told parents. This same coworker forced her class of 2-year-olds to get dressed themselves for outside play in the winter. So one time, a little girl ended up playing outside in the Minnesota snow without boots on for 10 minutes before my coworker noticed. Why is she working with kids, those poor babies? To be honest, like 50% of childcare workers you could look at and ask the same question. The standards are way too low. Worst part is, she opened her own in-home daycare during the pandemic. I can only imagine what kind of hell that is. I worked for a startup cider manufacturer in my second year of college. Normally after a day of production we have to sanitize all the metal components in hot caustic wash. There are hundreds of pieces, so it takes a while. Anyways, our managers left us an hour before our shift ended to clean up. I had to go do some e-commerce end-of-day stuff before leaving, so my coworker wrapped up the cleanup. On Monday we returned to the warehouse burned down. Apparently he left the caustic heater on all weekend and it caused a chemical fire. Everything was destroyed and it ended up bankrupting the company. He dropped out of his co-op degree after, he wouldn't be able to get recommended for another placement. The fact that the heater does not have an auto shut-off timer should be a crime in itself. It really should. Similar kind of parts washer burned down my dad's auto shop in the early 2000s. You'd be surprised how utterly dangerous industrial brewing is, especially on the small scale. Equipment manufacturers skipping steps to save pennies, small new brewers with their pretty heads full of ideas on how they can do better, cheaper than everyone else who is more experienced, refusal to implement known protocols and procedures. In that example, a digital controller with timer is not $100, but you try telling an overly excited new entrepreneur that buying the cheapest shit for his brewery might bite him in the ass. Before retiring, I was a branch manager for my state's DMV. Suddenly, one of the other managers is off sick for a few days. Then it became a week. 2 weeks. Then, the auditors completed their investigation, and she was gone. Turns out she was accepting bribes from aspiring truck drivers so they would pass the written test. She was taking in an additional $100 to $250 a week. The dumb part? The pay was decent, and the benefits were fantastic. So she gave up decent pay, fantastic benefits, and a really nice retirement for extra spending money. Then there was the assistant manager who would pocket anywhere from $750 to $1,500 a week. So a better payoff. But she was removing it from the day's cash receipts. She had only ever worked for the DMV, working her was up from clerk. She had no idea that there are accounting systems within accounting systems. The bank would send over deposit discrepancy reports which she would blithely pitch, not realizing that the same exact report was also sent to our central office. The wheels of state government turn slowly, so she was able to do this for over a year, but once those wheels start, they do not stop. She ended up going to prison, and ordered to pay over $30,000 in restitution. The full manager also got fired because the investigation revealed that he was rarely in the office, and left everything up to the assistant manager. That first one reminds me of a security guy at my job. He had been there for about a year, and while it wasn't a lucrative job, he made decent money for the position and tons of benefits. He was fired for stealing toilet paper from the janitorial closet. This was low-quality super thin commercial toilet paper, too. He had been doing it for a couple months before I was asked to put a camera in the closet. There was a lawyer and justice of the peace in Texas who had everything going for him, good, well-paying job, a nice career trajectory, etc. Got caught stealing 2 computer monitors from the court's IT room. Ended up losing everything, being disbarred, etc. all over about $600 in equipment which he could have easily paid for. It got even worse. He's on death row now, as he ended up murdering 2 of the people who'd charged, prosecuted him, blaming them for his downfall. All over 2 cheap computer monitors. She had no idea that there are accounting systems within accounting systems. A friend's former coworker got caught that way. She'd figured out a way to charge someone's credit card, then transfer it to herself while simultaneously refunding it. Or maybe canceling. This was a long time ago and the deets are hazy. So if anyone saw the unauthorized charge, they'd assume someone had corrected a mistake and not report it. However, there were imbalances elsewhere in the system, and she got caught within a few months. The interesting part was that she wasn't prosecuted, just made to resign. The company was more concerned about her making restitution, which she couldn't do from jail. They didn't even put it in her employee file. It made me wonder how many cases of embezzlement go unreported. An IT worker once sent an advisory to the entire company about an email several people had received with a malware link. She did so by forwarding the actual email with the link. I have a similar situation, corporate email blunders that happened a few years back. Some woman sent out a Happy Thanksgiving reminder email about some potluck she was hosting to our entire company, a global bank. An email that was clearly meant for a few of her friends at work, as it was a potluck at her personal home in upstate New York. Most people just deleted the email, but of course a few dozen boomers decided to reply all with, "Please take me off this email chain," which started the chaos of endless emails about this ducking potluck for like a whole week because these people just kept replying all asking to be taken off the email chain. Honestly, it was hilarious. There is so little joy in office work, but the reply all debacles always brought a smile to my face. Just watching entire departments devolve into frothing rage over an email they could just mute. So many exclamation points, signatures with full paragraph quotations clogging up the screen, the bright purple script fonts. Ah, beautiful chaos. Printed 500 copies of her gas bill on the company printer. The printer only has enough tray capacity for 250 copies, so she had to have reloaded the paper at least once. Working with a tree cutting service in Tampa, I was asked by the boss to ascend a nearby tree and cut some limbs. After seeing how close they were to power lines, I refused. He got really pissed off, yelled at me to clean up the area. Then he sent up Dallas. Dallas put on his climbing spikes, roped up the tree and started cutting. I was worried and kept watching him as I picked up limbs. Sure enough, he leaned back and before I could yell, put his sweaty bare back right against the power lines. A bright blue flash arced across his back and his body jerked away and slammed against the tree trunk. He bounced off and back into the wires. And again. Finally his spikes got dislodged and he fell out of the tree, falling until his safety line snapped taut, leaving him dangling upside down like a broken back doll. I thought he was dead, but a moment later he started moaning, then screaming. "I'm on fire," he yelled. We lowered him to the ground to the sound of sirens approaching. A neighbor had seen what happened and called EMT. A nasty black mark curved across his back and the current had surged down his legs and through his boot heels, seeking out ground. Both his heels were blown out. I quit at the end of the day. I worked for a tree company too, and my boss was fond of cutting costs as much as possible. One day we had 2 pin oaks to cut down that were about 140 feet tall. He wanted it done in 2 days, but obviously these were going to be multi-day trees to cut down. We got most of the branches off one and my boss decides to cut it at the base without topping it in a backyard that was way too small. Sure as shit once the tree started to go it smashed the neighbor's fence and tree line and we left for the day so the insurance adjuster could come out and quote a price for damages. I left about a week later and about a month ago I heard that one of the guys from that crew almost died cutting down a cottonwood with that same crew. It was a damn good thing I left when I did. I had a girl that worked for me that one day had a guy try to pay with a $100 bill. We all knew that we did not take any bill over a 20, but she doesn't listen sometimes. This time she took the bill, and when she was cashing out her draw, the smart safe didn't take the $100 bill. I asked if she checked it and she of course said yes. I looked at the bill and noticed it said, "movie prop," on the bill. She somehow missed it. Side note. Went to a unground rapper concert and one of the better K-Mo rappers was throwing hundreds and 20s. Just to find out after they turned on the light they were all prop money. There was a company in rural New York in the late 1960s that took scrap metal, melted it down in big coal-fired crucibles and made home decor pieces doorstops that looked like little dogs, bookends, that kind of thing. Not a huge profit margin but their materials were cheap and they had a steady market. An industrial consultant convinced them to transition to electric furnaces. Significant upfront expense, but much lower ongoing operating costs. The consultant even designed the new electric crucibles for the company. The company president had been thinking of expanding operations, so asked the industrial consultant to double the size of the electric crucible designs. The consultant did so, but made a mistake with the cube-square law in designing the supports for the crucibles. The first time the double-sized, but about 4 times as heavy crucibles were filled with scrap and fired up, they collapsed, flooding the factory floor with molten pot metal and chunks of wrecked equipment. The company went straight to bankruptcy. Now would that be fault of the consultant or the president? Because that's a duck-up. Small business owner, everything is the fault of the president. The consultant missed something that at least 2 engineers should have caught afterwards. My understanding is that the electric crucibles were designed, checked off on by the engineers who built them, then the change was made and the engineers didn't properly recheck and catch the consultant's error. I was working in a tool and die shop in my early 20s and I was watching an old guy, who was perpetually drunk, pound in an injector pin into a plastic injection mold with a big piece of steel round stock. Well, as he was pounding the pin in, he missed the pin and hit his thumb. It looked like his thumb exploded. He was in such pain he pissed himself. They ended up amputating down to the first knuckle. Then, to make matters worse, he got fired for being drunk on the job. Drunk in a machine shop is always bad news. In the emergency room, the doctor wrote down an order for 15 mg IM of Toradol, anti-inflammatory painkiller, and the nurse I was training misread and started to draw up 15 mg of Haldol, antipsychotic. That's triple the standard dose for Haldol. This was for a patient with abdominal pain. The nurse I was training didn't question it at all. This wasn't a newly graduated nurse mind, just new to my department. Yes, I stopped her before she gave the med. No, she did not continue to work in the emergency room. At certain points in my life I have considered nursing. I love to learn. I like to help people. Medicine is really interesting. I'm not squeamish. I can turn on sense of urgency, movement speed, but I just know I could not handle any job where a minor duck-up can result in death. I think I will stick to jobs where misreading sloppy handwriting only leads to a silly story. Thank you for being there and handling it. Once, I served drinks to a little girl and her mom. I accidentally got them mixed up. The mom ordered a mixed drink with bourbon and the daughter said her drink tasted funny. When I was a kid, the same thing happened at a cafe with my siblings being given my parents' coffee instead of their hot chocolate. The hot chocolate always came in the same weird mugs too, and the coffee came in glass mugs and they still drank it. I'm a car mechanic. Had a colleague once, who had a pretty small job on an engine, about an hour or 2 and costs like $50. Made a mistake, quite big, but also quite common and easy to make. It's the well shit category, not something to drag him through the mud for. Started fixing it, made an even bigger mistake. At this point we even had to outsource some issues we couldn't fix in-house. We were looking for about 2 weeks and $500, on us of course, not the customer, but it was still okay. We got everything back. He started putting the engine back together. All done. First run, whoopsie, another big problem, whole engine apart. Broke something again, outsourced, expensive. Overall it was about a month-long procedure, hitting $1,000. Once it was done, he got fired. He got away with a lot, but at one point it was way too much. Broke the spark plug while removing them? Almost. Glow plug. Needed to take the cylinder head off, not too bad, just take some time. But then stripped one of the cylinder head bolts and we couldn't get it out. We took the engine out and took it to a machine shop, or whatever they are called in English. Once it was back, he put it together, first run, water spews out of it, he put the cylinder head gasket upside down. While taking the engine apart again, which requires the removal of the battery housing which includes the electronic control unit, he broke the electronic control unit connector which we also can't fix in-house. At this point it was like a circus, you just never knew what will happen next. Thank you for watching all the way until the end of this extra long video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment a terrible mistake you have made. They don't have to be as bad as the ones in the video. Click the video above if you want to continue to watch my content.